In a quiet part of Lagos, there was a small village called Iyala. The people there lived simple lives, farming and selling food items in the local market. Everyone knew each other, and trust was a normal thing in that community. One day, a young man named Daniel returned to Iyala from the city. He wore fine clothes and moved with confidence. The villagers believed he was successful and respected him immediately. Daniel told the people that he had learned about a new business that could bring fast money. He said it was about buying and selling motor spare parts in bulk. The villagers listened with full attention. He told them that if they joined him and invested their savings, they would all make good profit in a few weeks. He promised that the business was safe and that he would handle everything himself. The village elders asked him questions about how the business worked. Daniel explained in simple terms, and everything he said sounded real. He smiled as he spoke, and his confidence made everyone believe him. Many villagers had never been part of a business before, but Daniel made them feel comfortable. He told them that this was their chance to grow and stop suffering. He said that together they could make Iyala known for success. After a few days of talking and convincing, most of the villagers agreed to invest. They brought out their savings, some selling goods and farm produce to raise the money. They gave it to Daniel in trust. Daniel collected all the money, thanked everyone, and promised to start the business in Lagos City. He said they should wait for good news in 2 weeks. The villagers clapped and prayed for him. That night, some of the older villagers sat by the fire and discussed Daniel. They said he looked different from the young boy they once knew. Some felt uneasy, but no one wanted to doubt him because he was one of their own. As everyone went to sleep that night, the moon was bright over Iyala. In the quiet air, a strange wind passed through the trees. The elders said it was a sign that the ancestors were watching. Daniel left Ijanla the next morning and went back to Lagos City. The villagers watched him leave in a small bus, waving and smiling. They were happy and hopeful because their money was now part of something big. When Daniel got to Lagos, he stayed in a small rented apartment in a busy area called Agege. He used part of the village money to pay rent and buy some fine clothes. He told himself that he would pay it back once the business started. He opened a small shop and printed a big signboard that said Daniel Motors Limited. People in the area thought it was a real business. Daniel took pictures of the shop and sent them to the villagers to show progress. The villagers were proud when they saw the photos. They went to the elders and said Daniel was doing well. Everyone believed that profit was coming soon, and they started planning how to use their share of the money. But Daniel had a different plan. He used most of the money for himself. He bought a small car, new phones, and started living like a rich man. He told his new friends in Lagos that he was a businessman. Weeks passed, and Daniel did not buy any spare parts. He only pretended to be busy. Every time someone called from the village, he said things were moving well and that the goods were on the way. Back in Ijanla, the villagers began to get impatient. Some wanted to know when the business would start giving returns. Daniel always gave excuses. Sometimes he said suppliers delayed delivery. Other times he said customs blocked the goods. The village elder, Baba Seyi, started to worry. He told others to be patient, saying Daniel was their son and would not deceive them. But deep inside, Baba Seyi had a small doubt that he could not explain. One evening, Daniel sat alone in his room in Lagos. He looked at the remaining money in a brown envelope. He thought about the villagers and felt a short moment of guilt. But he quickly told himself it was nothing serious. That same night, as Daniel slept, he had a strange dream. He saw old faces standing around him. They did not speak, but they stared at him in silence. He woke up sweating, but he ignored it and went back to sleep. Daniel woke up the next morning feeling uneasy. He could not forget the strange dream about old faces watching him. He tried to shake it off and told himself it was just stress from work. He went out to his shop and opened it as usual. Business was quiet because he had not stocked any real items. Some customers came in to ask for spare parts, but he told them to come back next week. That afternoon, a man named Tunde, who owned a real spare parts store nearby, visited Daniel. He asked Daniel what kind of goods he sold. Daniel gave unclear answers, and Tunde became suspicious. Tunde later told others in the area that Daniel's shop looked fake. People started talking, and soon Daniel noticed that fewer people greeted him. He began to feel uncomfortable in that environment. In the village, the 2 weeks Daniel promised had already passed. The villagers gathered at the square to ask the elders for updates. They wanted to know when they would get their money back. Baba Sei called Daniel on the phone. Daniel told him the goods were already at the port and would soon arrive. His voice sounded confident, but deep down he knew he was lying. After the call, Daniel started drinking every evening. He said it helped him think, but he was actually trying to forget his guilt. Each night he had more bad dreams, always seeing the same old faces watching him. One night he dreamed that an old woman with white hair pointed at him and said, "Return what does not belong to you." When he woke up, his heart was beating fast. He sat on the bed until morning. Daniel decided to visit a small church near his shop to pray. The pastor prayed for him, but said Daniel should confess anything wrong he had done. Daniel smiled and said everything was fine. That night, the electricity in his room went off suddenly. The wind blew his curtains even though the windows were closed. Daniel stood still and felt cold all over. He whispered to himself that maybe the ancestors of Ijala were truly angry.
In Ijanla village, the people started to talk among themselves. It had been more than 1 month since Daniel left, and no one had received any profit. Some villagers began to doubt his promises. One morning, the market women gathered near the well. They complained that Daniel no longer picked their calls. Some said they had sold all their goods to invest, and now they had nothing left to feed their families. Baba Sei called for a village meeting. Everyone came and sat under the big tree near the square. He told them to stay calm and wait for Daniel's next update. But his voice did not sound confident anymore. A woman named Mama Titi stood up during the meeting. She said Daniel might have used their money for himself. Many people murmured in agreement. Some said they wanted to go to Lagos and find him. That same evening, Baba Sei called Daniel again. Daniel answered after several tries. He said the goods had arrived, but there was a small delay with transport. He promised that by the next week, everyone would start seeing results. After the call, Baba Sei told the villagers what Daniel said. Some believed him again, but others were tired of waiting. They began to plan a visit to Lagos to check for themselves. Meanwhile in Lagos, Daniel had already spent most of the money. His shop was almost empty and rent was due. He began to panic because he could not return to the village without results. Daniel called a friend named Kelvin to borrow money. Kelvin refused, saying Daniel had been lying about his business. Daniel shouted at him and walked away angrily. That night, Daniel heard footsteps outside his door. He opened the door quickly, but no one was there. The sound came again, this time inside his room. He froze and looked around, but saw nothing. Daniel sat on his bed and held his head. He started to think that maybe the old woman in his dream was right. He whispered, "I will return the money soon," and stayed awake until morning.
3 men from Ijanla decided to travel to Lagos to see Daniel. Their names were Babasheyi, Kunle, and Musa. They agreed to go together because the villagers were tired of waiting for updates. Early in the morning, they entered a commercial bus heading to Lagos. The journey was long and none of them talked much. They were thinking about what they would say to Daniel when they arrived. When they reached Agege, they asked people about Daniel Mutus Limited. A shop owner pointed them to Daniel's building. The men walked there slowly and stopped in front of the shop. The shop was open, but it was empty. There were no goods, only dust and a broken chair inside. The men looked at each other in silence. They knew something was wrong. Daniel came out from the back room looking surprised. He did not expect to see them. His face changed quickly, but he tried to smile and shake their hands. Babasheyi asked him where the goods were. Daniel said the goods were still at the port. He repeated the same excuse, but this time his voice was shaky. The men noticed he was lying. Kunle walked around the shop checking every corner. There was nothing there. He asked Daniel how he spent the village money. Daniel got angry and shouted that they should trust him. Musa pulled Babasheyi aside and whispered that Daniel had finished the money. Babasheyi felt weak but did not show it. He told Daniel they would return to the village and talk with the people. Daniel followed them outside and begged them not to tell anyone. He promised to fix everything soon. The men did not reply. They entered a bus and left him standing by the road. That night, Daniel sat alone in his room and cried quietly. He realized he had lost their trust. The wind blew again through the window and he heard a woman's voice say, "Return what you took." He jumped from the bed in fear. When the 3 men returned to Ijanla, the villagers gathered around them. Everyone wanted to know what they saw in Lagos. Babasheyi asked them to sit down and listen carefully. He told them the truth. Daniel's shop was empty and there were no goods. He said Daniel had spent their money and had been lying all along. The people shouted in anger and disappointment. Some women began to cry. They had trusted Daniel and given him everything they had. Some men hit the ground with their fists, saying Daniel had brought shame to the village. The elders decided to send a message to Daniel. They told him he must return the money within 2 weeks or face the village council. Babasheyi called him that night and passed the message. Daniel listened quietly. His voice was low when he said he would find a way to pay them back. But he had no money left, and he did not know what to do. After the call, Daniel began to avoid everyone. He stopped going to his shop and stayed inside his room most of the time. He felt trapped and scared of what could happen next. Each night, Daniel's sleep became worse. He kept hearing footsteps, whispers, and strange voices. Sometimes he saw shadows move across the wall, even when the light was on. He went to a local pastor and asked for prayers. The pastor told him again that peace would only come if he returned what he took. Daniel left the church quietly and said nothing. Back in Ijanla, the villagers started losing patience. Some wanted to go to the police, while others said the ancestors would handle it. The elders decided to wait 1 more week before taking action. That night, Babasheyi poured libation in front of his house and called on the ancestors. He said Daniel had betrayed the community and must face justice. The wind blew stronger and the fire beside him went out suddenly.
That same night, after Babasheyi called on the ancestors, strange things started to happen in Ijanla. The air became cold, and people said they heard drums in the distance, even though no one was playing.
In the morning, some villagers found footprints near the village shrine. The prints were large and deep, but they disappeared suddenly halfway down the path. The elders said it was a sign that the ancestors had heard their call. In Lagos, Daniel woke up feeling weak and dizzy. His body was cold and he could not stop shaking. He looked around his room and saw his mirror fall from the wall without anyone touching it. He tried to go outside, but his legs felt heavy. He sat down and started crying. He said out loud that he was sorry, but no one was there to listen. Later that day, Daniel's neighbor came to check on him. She found him sitting on the floor, sweating and breathing hard. When she asked what was wrong, he said he had done something bad to his village. The neighbor called a local pastor to come and pray for him. The pastor arrived, looked around the room, and said there was a strong spiritual presence there. Daniel kept saying he wanted to go back home. At night, Daniel had another dream. He saw the same old woman with white hair standing near a river. She told him to return to Ijala and make peace before it was too late. When he woke up, his heart was racing. He packed a small bag, left his apartment, and took a bus heading to Ijala. He did not tell anyone where he was going. Back in the village, Baba Seyi was sitting outside when he suddenly felt a cold wind pass through him. He told the people around that Daniel was on his way home. That night, lightning struck near the village shrine, but no rain followed. The elders said it was a final warning. They agreed to meet the next morning to wait for Daniel's return.
Daniel arrived at Ijula early in the morning. He looked tired and weak. His clothes were dirty and his eyes were red from lack of sleep. The villagers who saw him first ran to tell the elders. Baba Seyi and the other elders gathered at the village square. When Daniel arrived there, everyone was silent. Some people looked angry, while others looked disappointed. Daniel knelt down and greeted the elders. He said he had come to confess and to beg for forgiveness. Baba Seyi told him to speak clearly so that everyone could hear. Daniel explained everything. He said he took the money and used it for himself. He said he never bought any goods and that he had lied from the beginning. He kept his head down as he spoke. The villagers shouted in anger. Some women cried. Others wanted to beat him, but the elders stopped them. Baba Seyi told everyone to stay calm, because anger would not bring the money back. Daniel said he did not have the money anymore. He promised to work and pay back little by little. The people did not trust him, but the elders said they would discuss and decide what to do. After the meeting, Daniel was told to stay in his late father's old hut near the river. He was not allowed to leave the village until the council made a final decision. Daniel agreed and walked there quietly. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He felt something moving outside the hut. When he looked out the window, he saw shadows near the riverbank. They looked like people, but they were silent. He called out, but no one answered. He went back to his bed and covered himself. His heart was beating fast. He whispered that he was sorry and closed his eyes. In the middle of the night, the wind grew stronger. The door of the hut opened on its own. Daniel sat up quickly, but the room was empty. He began to cry, knowing that peace had not yet come.
The next morning, the elders called for another meeting. Everyone in the village came to the square. They wanted to know what would happen to Daniel. The air felt heavy as people waited in silence. Baba Sei stood up first. He said that what Daniel did was a serious crime. He said it was not only about money, but about trust. Everyone in the village had trusted Daniel, and he had broken that trust. Another elder, Mama Tola, said Daniel's crime had brought shame to Ijanla. She said strangers would now call them a village of thieves. She wanted Daniel to leave the village and never return. Some people agreed with Mama Tola, but others said Daniel should be given another chance. They reminded everyone that Daniel had confessed by himself and had returned home. Baba Sei raised his hand to stop the noise. He said the council would give Daniel a fair hearing. He asked Daniel to stand in the middle of the square. Daniel walked slowly and kept his eyes on the ground. Baba Sei asked Daniel one question. "Why did you come back?" Daniel said he came back because his mind was not at rest. He said he wanted peace, even if it meant punishment. The elders whispered among themselves for a long time. Then Baba Sei stood up again. He said Daniel would not be banished, but he would serve the community. He must work for 2 years without pay to repay what he had stolen. The villagers accepted the decision. Some still felt angry, but they respected Baba Sei's judgment. Daniel bowed his head and thanked them for not sending him away. That night, Daniel started his first task. He cleaned the market square and fetched water for the elderly. No one spoke to him. They only watched from a distance. As he worked, Daniel thought about everything he had lost. He wished he had not been greedy. For the first time in a long while, he felt calm inside. He told himself he would never lie again.
2 years passed, and Daniel worked every day. He cleaned the village square, helped the farmers, and fixed broken huts. He never complained. Slowly, people began to greet him again. Baba Sei noticed that Daniel had changed. He no longer looked proud or careless. He was humble and quiet. Baba Sei told the other elders that Daniel had learned his lesson. One afternoon, Daniel helped Mama Tola carry her firewood. She looked at him and smiled for the first time in years. She said that everyone makes mistakes, but only a few people truly change. Daniel thanked her and continued working. He started teaching young boys how to be honest and responsible. The children liked him and listened to his advice. When the 2 years ended, the council met again. Baba Sei said Daniel had completed his punishment. He asked the people if they had forgiven him. Everyone raised their hands in agreement. Daniel was moved to tears. He knelt down and thanked the elders and the villagers. Baba Sei helped him up and said the past was over. The people clapped and cheered. That evening, the villagers gathered at the square to celebrate. They cooked food and danced. Daniel sat quietly, watching the joy around him. For the first time in a long while, he felt free. Later that night, Daniel walked to the riverbank alone. He looked at the calm water and remembered the night he had seen shadows there. This time there were no shadows, only peace. He said a short prayer, thanking God for mercy and for giving him a second chance. He promised to live a clean life and help others who made mistakes. When Daniel returned home, he lay down and slept deeply. The next morning, the children came to greet him. They called him Uncle Daniel the Honest. He smiled, knowing that he had finally regained his dignity.